Just guys, before we get on to some more racing, what is your take on the futures? And obviously they're doing the combines and they're trying to bridge that gap between the sort of amateur and professional racing like the MXGP have done so well with the EMX classes. So just your take on how they're introducing these things over the last couple of years and how good it is for the kids racing on the big stage under the big lights with the pressure of having things like the crowd. So would love your thoughts on it too.
Yeah, it's so amazing. I think they recognize that our amateur racing scene here in the U.S. is lacking. When Jet and Hunter Lawrence were on the Whiskey Throttle show, Dazzy actually came on and said as much. He goes, if they didn't move Jet up into the pro class when they did, he goes, we were going to send him back to Europe because he was actually getting worse that year here, trying to, going through our amateur national program. And they wanted more racing. They wanted just different format. Over here, the amateurs don't do a ton of racing. They go to these camps, they ride day in and day out and kind of get into this routine, and they only race 4 or 5 times a year. They just go to these big events, and then that's where you show out, and then that's it. And it's hard to improve your racecraft when you're not racing that much. So I think it's great what they're doing. I was having a chat with Jimmy Button about, as we were watching the Futures practice go on, I said, man, Jimmy, can you imagine how much better we would have been as riders if we had this opportunity at 15, 16, 17? And he laughed. He goes, dude, the first time I ever got on a real Supercross track was in 1990 when I showed up to Anaheim 1 and rolled out for the first practice. There wasn't Supercross tracks to practice on, and I said, yeah, well, I said, pretty much same here. I would sneak on to Yamaha's old test track out at De Anza Raceway, if you've heard of that. It was overgrown with weeds, and Yamaha hadn't been there in a decade, but the track, was still there, little remains of it, and that was what we rode on. That was the best we could do. So it's just crazy what these kids are able to get onto now. And when I heard Gavin Towers, I know he was frustrated he didn't win, and I think Cole Davies shocked him. He was so smooth and calm. He never got rattled, and you could see Towers just kind of frantic. And but I will say this about Gavin Towers, and I don't even know him. I've never met him. But I watched his interview after the race, and although he was disappointed, and he said as much, man, that kid was more poised and better spoken than most of the pros that night on the podium. So I'm super optimistic about kind of the future of the sport and this futures program and the combine thing they're doing outdoors. I think it's exactly what we needed over here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my thought on it is, one, the racing, the gate drops, that helps a lot, but also it gets these kids used to the schedule. I mean, that schedule is gnarly, and they don't run it in amateur, so it gives them a chance to do that, and it lets them get their personality out there and get in front of the media. I mean, there was a funny video of Cooper Webb talking to the guys about, hey, there's always a camera on you and this and that, and you got to watch what you say. And then he goes, first time I went to Anaheim, I shit myself, so I thought it was funny as hell, He's like telling them to watch what they say, and then he's like, I shit myself, so that's pretty damn funny, but they get coaching on media and stuff like that. And that'll all help build their brand with, obviously we know how important social media is and how much, look at Deegan. The kid is probably making a ton off just his YouTube and all that stuff on top of his salary and race bonuses. There's big money to be had, and the kids that are smart are going to hone in on that. And one of the kids I think is really going to do well is Casey Cochran, and his shoulder's still kind of goofed up, so he didn't race the futures this year or this weekend, but that kid is straight comedy. When you guys see him and you see him get an interview, that kid is classic. He's going to be so fun on the podium, and so it's really good because it'll allow them to bring out their personalities earlier, and then you're not going to get these robots on the stage and not all nervous in the service when they finally get to the big show and actually hit a podium, so there's a lot of good things besides the gate drops that it does for them. It gets them used to the schedule and gets them used to people in their face and all that kind of stuff. I think the whole thing's rad.
Well, and I'll just add one more thing to that. And Jeff, you've now seen it going down on the floor and the lights on and the stadium completely packed full of people. As a kid, it's one thing to be down there just watching, but when you're rolling to that line and you're supposed to be focusing on riding, and you look up and there's 50,000 people and lights shining on you, and like you feel like everyone's staring at you, even if they aren't. That is very tough to block out initially. That takes some practice, and these kids are getting that practice now so that when they actually do move up and start racing professionally, they're going to be a little more used to it. And, while it is a little dangerous to put them on a track, I think getting them comfortable with that will make them safer when they step into the professional ranks and actually have to do it as a job.